I'm just going to say this right now so I can get it off my chest. The Harlequins are weird, and I mean weird even by Eldar standards. Imagine this for a beat, if you will. Take a famous historian, let's say Edward Gibbon, author of Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. That's appropriate. A kung fu master, an Olympic gymnast, the Joker, not one of the darker versions. I'm talking Cesar Romero from the Adam West Batman series, with the maniacal laughter and harebrained schemes cranked up to 11. Throw all that in a blender along with the most pretentious drama student you've ever met. Then take what comes out and paint it in contrasting colors so bright and eye-watering that it makes the Trolls movie look like a grayscale image. That is the Harlequins, in as simple a manner as I can possibly describe. For a more detailed description of what they're like and what they do, we have to, of course, go back to the Fall. During the latter years of the Eldar Empire, while most of the species was either up to its eyeballs in debauchery or desperately trying to flee from said debauchery, there appeared amidst the degradation of Eldar society small groups of traveling actors. These troops would travel from world to world and city to city, putting on performances for the masses. Through gesture and dance, they acted out the history and mythology of the Eldar race, trying to remind their people of what they had once been and what the current generation was happily throwing down the toilet in the name of senseless hedonism. Unfortunately, everyone's a critic, even in the grim darkness of the far future. Only instead of downvotes and negative comments, the Eldar responded to these performances with murderous violence, forcing the first Harlequins to learn how to fight in order to defend themselves. Unsurprisingly, the Eldar did not heed the warnings of the Harlequins, and so, when the fall finally happened, condemned themselves to having their souls sucked out of their bodies and then subjected to torture rape by Slaanesh for all eternity. Besides losing over 99% of their own population to She Who Thirsts, the other major event of the fall of the Eldar was the destruction of the Eldar gods, of which only 3 are believed to have survived. Isha, goddess of life and fertility, who to this day supposedly languishes as the prisoner of the plague god Nurgle. Cain, the god of war, who survives only in the loosest sense, having been shattered into 1,000 fragments by Slaanesh. And finally, according to the Harlequins, the one deity that is said to have actually survived the fall unscathed, Kegarak, the laughing god, the trickster of the old pantheon. When the fall occurred and the other Eldar gods were either destroyed or captured, Kegarak, realizing that the jig was up, is said to have fled into the webway, taking with him the Harlequins, whom he had marked as his chosen people. The Harlequins were never seen again by their fellow Eldar until Millennia 33, when the craft world of Ulthwé was engaged in a desperate fight against a horde of Slaaneshi demons. Suddenly, in the midst of the battle, appeared a group of strange Eldar in brightly colored motley and masks, who fell upon the demons with a ferocity and skill that even the greatest exarchs would struggle to match. The Harlequins single-handedly turned the tide, identified themselves only as the Mask of the Midnight Sorrow, and departed. And that's pretty much what the Harlequins have done ever since. As is typical of Eldar, the Harlequins' ultimate goals are known only to themselves, but they do have at least 2 known objectives. The first is the preservation of the unity of the Eldar species. To this end, Harlequin troops and masks travel across the galaxy via the Webway, to the Craft Worlds, to the Exodite Worlds, and the Dark Eldar city of Komarog, putting on their theatrical performances for anyone willing to listen, reminding the other Eldar of all walks of life of their shared history, and the fact that they are, in the end, one people. The second duty is to oppose the machinations of chaos in general, and Slaanesh in particular. Though they operate in smaller numbers than anyone else, fortunately the Harlequins make up for their numerical disadvantage with some of the fanciest and most effective toys in the 41st millennium. It's easy to forget that though they are a fallen species, the Eldar once boasted the most advanced technology in the whole of the Warhammer universe, only losing out to the Necrons. Besides the classic Eldar weaponry such as power swords, shuriken pistols, and neurodisruptors, Harlequins are known to wield such charming tools of murder as the Harlequin's Kiss, arguably their signature weapon. How to describe the Harlequin's Kiss? Essentially, it's a sharpened metal tube containing a microfilament, incredibly sharp, high-tensile coiled wire. The tube, attached to the forearm of the Harlequin, punctures the body of the enemy, and upon contact, the wire is unleashed, essentially liquefying the opponent's organs from the inside. Instead of body armor, Harlequins tend to favor holo suits and flip belts. The former uses holographic technology to break up the Harlequin's outline, making them harder to hit, while the flip belt acts as a miniature anti-gravity device, enabling them to perform ludicrously impossible feats of agility. Of course, the most noteworthy article of clothing used by the Harlequins are their masks. Like the holosuit, a Harlequin's mask is essentially a holographic projector of sorts. In the practical sense, Eldar Harlequins use their masks and their latent psychic abilities to project images of fear and terror into the minds of their enemies, making them easier to defeat. But Harlequin masks also carry a symbolic value. Unlike the other factions, Harlequins do not produce more Harlequins from among their own ranks. Instead, they recruit from the other Eldar factions. If an Eldar, whether they be a Dark Eldar, a Craftworlder, or an Exodite, decides to join the ranks of the Harlequins, they essentially put aside their old lives and their old identity. Wearing the masks represents this abandonment of their old life and the commitment to their new one as servants of the Laughing God. The type of mask that a Harlequin wears usually determines their combat/theatrical role. For to Harlequins, war is just a more violent version of their theatrical performances. Most Harlequins are organized as troops, groups of 3 individuals whose characters are based around a certain story, theme, or idea. Troops usually come in 3 broad categories. Light troops are usually themed around heroic protagonists and swift action. Dark troops around antagonists, villains, and dark endings, while Twilight troops are about transition and feature characters that bestride many different worlds or settings. 3 troops, preferably 1 of each type, then come together to form a mask. And while the composition of a mask may vary, there are certain recognizable roles, stock characters if you will. For example, the Shadow Seers, the elite psychers of the Harlequins. They usually stand in for characters that represent fate, while also acting as the narrator or Greek chorus of the story being told, usually speaking in rhyme or in song. Like Craftworld Farseers, they also have the ability to see into the future, though where the Farseer is usually concerned with the literal manipulation of the skeins of fate, the Shadow Seer is concerned that all the players upon the stage, be that the literal stage of art or the metaphorical stage of war, fulfill their specific role. Their masks are always faceless, their intentions unknown to all others. Next is the Death Jester, the heavy weapons specialist of a Harlequin troop or mask. As their name and skeletally themed attire implies, the Death Jester represents death or any character associated with death. They are typically sinister in personality and known to have morbid senses of humor. A Death Jester's idea of a joke is to inflict a particularly painful death upon a hapless foe. For this reason, their favorite weapon is the Shrieker Cannon, a powerful variant of the typical Eldar shuriken weapon. The rounds of a Shrieker Cannon are usually laced with potent mutagenic poisons that, once introduced into the bloodstream of a target, usually reacts violently with the victim's body chemistry, causing him or her to explode in a gory mess, much to the amusement of the Death Jester. Then there are the Great Harlequins, or Avatars, the leaders of the Harlequin Eldar. Their smiling masks usually represent the protagonist of a story, and when performing the Fall of the Eldar, the mask represents Kegarak, the Laughing God himself. According to the Harlequins, ever since the Fall, Kegarak has been engaged in a never-ending game of wits with Slaanesh. Being a trickster god, Kegarak is always seeking to distract the attention of She Who Thirsts long enough so that he can snatch an Eldar soul from Slaaneish's grasp. This belief is what gives Harlequins their confidence and fearlessness in battle. They use soul stones just like the Craftworlders and the Exodites, but the latter still fear death, and worse, what comes after should the soul stone be lost. The Harlequins have no such fear. They are convinced that their patron god is always looking out for them, and that even should they fall into the clutches of She Who Thirsts, one day Kegarak will snatch their souls from the literal claws of eternal torment, and their souls will know salvation. But if the Avatar performs the role of the hero of the story, someone has to fill the role of villain. Thus we come to the Solitaire. This is a Harlequin that operates entirely alone and never communicates with any other of his brethren except when a mask is gathered to perform the fall of the Eldar. For only a Solitaire can play the role of Slaanesh itself. Anyone else who tries is simply driven mad. Basically, it would seem that playing the part of the Dark Prince of Pleasure and Pain requires a level of talent and commitment to the role that would make Daniel Day-Lewis look like a rank amateur. As a result, Solitaires are sinister, inscrutable beings, and it is considered bad luck to speak with one. One of many reasons why they generally work alone. Just to really twist the knife, whereas other Harlequins can rely upon Kegarak one day saving them should they fall into the clutches of Slaanesh, the Solitaire, because of what they must go through and what they are required to be to play their particular role, are pretty much condemned to be beyond even the Laughing God's power to save. If you are a Solitaire, it is very much a given that you are going to fall into the clutches of Slaanesh and be subjected to all of her dark delights. Bummer. As I said at the beginning of the video, Harlequins are weird, even by Eldar standards, and even their own brethren seem to share this view. Maybe it's because the Harlequins tend to speak in a very theatrical manner, as if they are constantly performing even when not on stage. Or perhaps it's the fact that even among the Eldar, Harlequins tend to cultivate a rather superior attitude, as if they know things that even their fellow Eldar don't know and aren't interested in sharing what that is. This last is not particularly surprising, given that among the many secrets known only to the scions of the Laughing God is the location of the Black Library, an ancient craft world lost somewhere within the webway, said to contain all knowledge concerning chaos and the warp. Unsurprisingly, many have tried and failed to find the Black Library and plunder its secrets, the most famous example being the chaos sorcerer Azek Ahriman. But perhaps the biggest reason why everybody finds the Harlequins so off-putting may be because whenever they are at work, the Harlequins seem to be doing everything in their power to manipulate everyone and everything around them towards an end goal known only to themselves. To the Harlequins, all the galaxy is but a stage, and the men and aliens merely players. The heirs of the Laughing God may be the only ones who know the script, but they are determined that every character in the grand drama shall play his part, whether they like it or not, or even whether they know it or not. According to some Harlequins, the salvation of the Eldar will come when Kegarak, in his endless mind games with Slaanesh, shall trick She Who Thirsts into dedicating all of its energies towards the salvation of the Eldar rather than their damnation. This seems pretty improbable. But then again, in recent days and months, a lot of seemingly improbable things have occurred. The fall of Cadia, the restoration of a Primarch, the return of the Silent King, and the early creation of Aeneid, the god of death. If anything can be learned in these early days of the 42nd millennium, it may be that in fact, anything is possible.